Chapter 2. Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez. Deal? BK asked her seriously after laying out some papers that included all the conditions and the reasons why they would marry if his mother requested it. Deal. BK smiled sweetly at her when he heard her answer. From now on, practice calling me by whatever endearment you like, so it seems more believable. Okay. She thought for a moment. What's a good one? She wondered to herself. She looked at him then. I'll think about it. I'll just send you my choice once I decide. He nodded at her. So, should I take you home? We're only going to my parents' house on Sunday, after all. We still have time to practice. She couldn't help but smile at the word practice as if it were a play. Sure, she agreed. It was a good thing, too, because she had plenty of laundry to do. Let's go, he said next. He would take her home so he'd know where to pick her up on Sunday. BK walked ahead of her, but stopped in front of the guy he approached earlier. BK had mentioned that this guy was his friend and was actually the cafe owner. He helped her into his car, and she felt a little shy because it was so fancy. It was her first time riding in a car like this. The nicest ride she'd ever taken was a taxi. Cars weren't common in her neighborhood. Her compound was in a narrow alley where tricycles were the only vehicles parked outside. Their homes were packed closely together, making fires dangerous. She glanced at the screen when BK typed in the address she gave him, which was somewhere in the middle. His car was so fancy, her soon-to-be husband really was rich. Her mom was sure to be shocked. She couldn't help but smile. She'd be wealthy too if this worked out. She was lucky to be marrying someone good-looking and wealthy, a complete package. Only music filled the car as they drove in silence. BK didn't say anything more. Well, they had already talked about everything earlier. It took them over an hour to get home because of the heavy traffic. That's the problem with her area, it's always so crowded. Just here, she said to BK, looking outside. She could see the narrow alley leading to her friend's house. What? Is your house down there? That looks like a factory, he said, frowning as he looked at where they stopped. See that alley? Just go through there. Everyone knows me, so they'll find me if needed. He rubbed his forehead. All right, let's just update each other later. She nodded in agreement. If you need to talk to me, just text first so I can turn on my data. We don't have Wi-Fi. Sure, he said, and she got out. He didn't even open the door for her. He honked briefly before reversing. She entered the alley after watching him drive away. She checked her phone, smiling when she remembered they had taken a picture together. They had a few sweet photos. BK said he'd show them to his mother. She'd also asked for a copy and showed it to her friend, Amelie. OMG, her friend exclaimed when she saw the photo of them at the cafe. Don't let him go. It's like winning the lottery. He's rich and yummy. Just don't forget about me, huh? She smiled back. Of course not. You're my friend, she replied and went straight to her room. Thursday arrived, and BK called her. He wanted her to come to his condo because they needed to discuss things and rehearse. It would be tough to convince his mom, he said. So she went right away. After all, she still didn't know him that well. Even though he had shared his likes, it was different to meet in person. She left early that day and stopped by the market to buy some fruit. They were going to bond all day. He thought a day would be enough to get to know each other better, just for his parents. She had some trouble finding his condo. VGC was so big. She finally relaxed when she saw the building. Did you bring it? He asked her when he opened the door. He'd asked her to bring longan, which was his favorite. She had a hard time finding it earlier. He was more demanding than a pregnant woman. Here, she said, showing him the bag. He smiled as he took it and led her inside his condo. He went to the kitchen, probably to get a dish for the fruit. She couldn't help but admire the condo's interior. BK had good taste, or maybe he had a designer. He returned to the living room with a tray of longan and was already eating some. He offered her some, but said she could only take 5, which made her wince. Why offer if the amount is limited? She decided not to ask for more. Nothing really happened that day. They eventually did their own thing. She stayed in the living room, and BK went to his room. So much for bonding. She didn't know what he was doing inside his room, and she didn't want to interfere. Around 5 o'clock, she said goodbye. She knocked a few times before he finally opened the door. He was absorbed in gaming when she peeked in. He hadn't gone to the office because they were supposed to bond, but instead, he just played. It looks like she would have to get used to him if this continued. He wasn't exactly a gentleman. He didn't even see her out. Oh well, they had a deal after all. The days flew by and Sunday came. As planned, she and BK were going to his family's home. She felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Even though she looked nice in her outfit, she was still nervous. She had a foreign heritage, so anything looked good on her. She didn't look poor. BK had chosen her outfit, simple but elegant. His mother wouldn't mind her style, he said. Sometimes she even preferred simple looks. Her phone lit up with a message from BK saying he was nearby. She didn't have to wait long before he arrived. She was already outside. Sorry for the wait, Daph. Traffic's really bad here, he said, breathing deeply. It's okay, she replied. He glanced at her. You look good. Thanks. You have good taste. Actually, someone else picked it. I just showed them your picture, and voila. He smiled and started the car. Their trip took over an hour from her place. She held her chest when they entered a fancy subdivision. I'm nervous, she whispered. BK glanced at her. Relax. They don't bite. My parents will like you, and they'll love you even more. She took a deep breath and said, It's still nerve-wracking. What if they don't like me? That's impossible, Daph. I'm sure they'll like you. Just have faith, okay? Hopefully. He held her hand, and they both paused at the spark they felt. They exchanged a glance. She gasped when they arrived at a beautiful house. Her heart beat faster. Come on, BK said as she got out of the car. He opened the car door for her for the first time, and even held open the front door of the house. Here they are, BK whispered to her, his arm wrapping around her waist, making her gulp. Hi, Mom. Dad. BK waved at his parents, who were coming down the stairs. They walked toward them. Meet my lovely girlfriend, Daphne Frost. BK introduced her with a smile, then looked at her fondly. Baby, my parents. He gestured toward his parents. She couldn't help but stare at him because of the endearment he used. Why did baby sound so nice? She still hadn't decided on an endearment herself. She turned her attention to his parents, who were smiling at her. Hello. Good evening, she stammered slightly. Daphne is even more beautiful in person, huh? BK's mom greeted them cheerfully. She couldn't help but feel awkward as his mom gave her a cheek-to-cheek kiss. Welcome to the family, the woman said, making her eyebrows furrow slightly. BK had only mentioned her as his girlfriend, so what was with the warm welcome? Did this mean his parents were excited about their possible marriage? Was she already approved as BK's future wife? Thank you, she replied since she didn't know what else to say. She shook hands with BK's dad after. BK was right. He did look like his father. She could just imagine what BK would look like when he was older. Is Judge ready, honey? BK's mom asked his dad. She and BK exchanged glances. They both swallowed hard. Why was she asking if the judge was ready? Did she mean they'd get married right away? He's on his way, sweetheart, replied BK's dad. Mom, I just need to show Daph something in my room. BK took her hand and clasped it in his. All right. I'll call you both when we're ready. Okay. His mom smiled as she looked at her, and she returned the smile. BK locked his room door once they were inside. Fuck. I thought Mom was joking, he muttered, looking at her. About what? Didn't you hear? Judge Israel is on the way to marry us. Damn it. Her mouth fell open. What do we do? Didn't we discuss this? We expected this might happen. I just didn't think it would be today. I guess Mom didn't buy our little act. She gazed at him. I'm fine with the wedding being today, BK. Are you serious? He asked with a scrunched up face. She nodded. He sighed deeply and sat on the bed. All right. As they had expected, BK's mom wanted them to get married immediately. It seemed she had planned for it since there were family members in attendance. His other two siblings, who had families of their own, also arrived. Daphne hadn't expected BK's mother to have prepared a simple wedding gown for her. She had to admit it was impressive since the white dress fit her perfectly. You're so beautiful, dear, his mom said, adjusting her veil. Don't worry, we'll have your family at the church wedding. But for now, I just want to make sure you two are married. Okay. She gave the best smile she could after that. His mom guided her downstairs. They walked toward the pool. Her lips parted when she saw BK wearing a tuxedo. Her friend was right. Her future husband was indeed hot. He looked so appealing in his dark green tuxedo. But he was so serious that it lessened his good looks a bit. She smiled at him, and he returned the smile as she stepped onto the red carpet. He was waiting for her there. Meet Andy, my only daughter. Andy, this is Daphne. His mom introduced her with a smile. Welcome to the Hernandez family, Daphne. I'm happy you finally got our youngest to settle down. If you ever need anything, we're here. You know, girl power. She laughed and nodded at Andy's words. After that, they told her to walk down the red carpet toward BK and the judge. She walked slowly as Make You Feel My Love by Adele played. She hadn't chosen it, but she liked that song. She gazed intensely at her future husband as she walked, and he looked back at her the same way. She was nervous. She didn't understand herself. They didn't have feelings for each other, but she felt like crying. She held herself together to avoid tears. She smiled at BK's parents once she reached them. They hugged and congratulated her. She held onto BK's arm. She gasped when he kissed her head before they walked toward the judge. She hadn't expected that move from BK. It looked like he had planned it well for this act. The ceremony felt quick to her. She wanted to skip the moment when the judge announced that they could seal their vows with a kiss. She placed her hand on her husband's chest as he pulled her closer by the waist. She closed her eyes when his lips pressed against hers. There was something different about their kiss. Maybe it was because it was her first. It was a quick kiss, but it felt long. She felt like his lips had lingered on hers. Applause surrounded them afterwards. She looked shyly at the guests. BK, on the other hand, was grinning widely. She couldn't move away when BK leaned closer to her ear and whispered, "Welcome to married life, Daphne Sevilla Frost Hernandez."